Hi everyone, welcome back to It's Time. I'm Melanie and it's another grocery haul meal prep video. And the haul this week is actually a little bit smaller, which is kind of nice, better for the budget. I think it's because we are going to be eating some of the leftovers we had from previous weeks, and I also just had some stuff already in my pantry. So we've got apples for snacks, leeks. I can't remember what recipe that's used for, but that will be interesting, I'm sure. A bunch of zucchini and some lettuce, butternut squash, spaghetti squash, blueberries, eggs, sun-dried tomatoes, almond butter, some Greek yogurt, garlic because I ran out last time, and then chia seeds. We've been putting this in our breakfast, so like our smoothies, oatmeal, that kind of thing. I think chia seeds are supposed to be a good source of omega-3, I believe, and some dried apricots. And that is it. Just a small little haul. But I will be moving into some prep. I think there's a soup to make and maybe one other item. So let's get to it. The first meal that I'm going to be prepping is Mom's Minestrone Soup. I am using my rice cooker that has like a slow cooker function and saute. I have about a tablespoon of oil in there, and we're going to saute a whole onion. So to the onions, we're going to add celery. It's about 2 stalks. And if I had chopped up the carrots, it would be roughly 2 carrots peeled and chopped, but I am cheating and I'm using shredded carrots, and I'm just going to put in 2 and a little bit of generous handfuls. The recipe calls for 4 cloves of garlic minced. I use pre-minced garlic, and I'm just going to put, I don't know, that much in. And 1 teaspoon of oregano, and I'm just going to eyeball it. And we're going to cook this for a little while longer. And meanwhile, I will chop up the zucchini. To this, I'm going to add 2 cans or 29 ounces of diced tomatoes. And the recipe did call for some tomato paste, 1 tablespoon, but I'm not opening a can for 1 tablespoon. I'm just not going to do it. What I really should do is open a can and freeze it in 1 tablespoon increments so that I have it ready, but I'm not going to do that today. We're just going to bypass that. Okay, so now the recipe, you know, it says a few things like cook this before adding the beans and stuff like that. I just don't roll that way. So what we're going to do is I'm going to add zucchini. Isn't that funny? I just say don't roll that way. Basically, if I'm going to cook in a slow cooker, I don't want to have to come back and add stuff unless it's something that's really sensitive to heat. Like we have to add kale, and I'll just add that at the end. But everything else, I don't want to have to come after a certain point, add more in, etc. And I don't think it'll hurt the beans to be in for this long. The recipe calls for 1 28-ounce can of kidney beans drained and rinsed. I have 2 15.5-ounce cans, and I'm saying that's good enough. Okay, now as for broth, it says 6 cups or 1.5 liters of vegetable broth. I have these Tetra Packs, and I'm just going to use both. I'm sure it's 2 liters, not 1.5, but I don't think that that's a bad thing. Just a little more liquid. Okay, and I'm going to throw in 2 bay leaves. Recipe calls for 1. The only other thing the recipe calls for is some red pepper flakes, about 1/4 teaspoon. I'm just going to splash a couple in. And it also called the rind from a chunk of Parmesan cheese. I don't have that, and I think that's where the salt was supposed to come in, so I'm going to add a little bit of salt. the recipe did call for salt. It did say salt and pepper, so we better add that in. And it does call for 2 cups of kale at the end. I don't think I have 2 cups, but I have what I have, so we will add that at the end. But in the meantime, I am going to flip this to slow cooker mode and come back later when it's done. Here's what the soup is looking like. And we'll just throw in the kale and let this sit for a few more minutes, and then this one is done. I'm going to use my new molds to freeze this, the extras. Okay, let's move on to the next meal. So the next meal isn't so much meal prep in the sense of preparing for the upcoming week. This is going to be my actual meal today. It is Tuesday, and basically Saturday I ran out of steam and so no more prep got done. So I'm going to show you the meal that I'm going to make today. It is supposed to be pan-seared trout with tomato and basil and zucchini pesto with sun-dried tomatoes as a side. I don't have trout, but I have cod, so I'm just going to swap the two out. And the zucchini pasta, of course, calls for a spiralizer, which I don't have, so we're just going to use a good old-fashioned vegetable peeler. The recipe does call to make your own pesto, but I have some on hand that I would just rather use up, so I'm going to use that instead, and sun-dried tomatoes in a can. So let's get started with the zucchini first, and then we'll work on the fish. Now, I don't know if I dare even admit to this, but I have never, well, clearly I've never spiralized a zucchini, because if I had, I would have a machine to do so. I don't think I've ever done any kind of turning zucchini into pasta before, in any shape or form is what I'm trying to say. So I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. I just figured it makes sense to cut it lengthwise, and then hopefully this will work. These aren't too big of zucchinis, but we'll find out. And then just run it like that. That's my guess. We're just going to throw that in the bowl. Now this is supposed to make 2 servings, so I will have this for lunch tomorrow as well. So I'm just going to do the rest of this just in the same way I'm showing you here, and I will be back with the next steps. So because I'm using this pre-made pesto, I have no idea how much to put in here. So I am just going to add a few spoonfuls and toss it and see how that looks. I think that looks pretty good. And I'm just going to add the sun-dried tomatoes as a 1/4 cup. And toss that as well. Okay, so this is going to get tossed into the frying pan when I'm finished, just after I'm finished frying the fish for just a couple minutes to kind of warm it up. Really doesn't need much as in the way of cooking. And so let's move on to the fish. The prep for the fish involves about 1 cup of cherry tomatoes. These are from my little balcony garden. I'm just going to cut those in half, and also a 1/4 cup of small basil leaves. This is also from my garden. So we're going to tear this up, get the tomato halves done, and then we're going to need a little bit of garlic and some salt and pepper and olive oil, and we're going to move over to the stove. So here we go. We're going to add a little bit of garlic to the frying pan, tomatoes, some salt, and some pepper. We just need to cook this for about 3 to 5 minutes until the tomatoes soften. Then we will remove from heat and stir in the basil leaves. That looks pretty good. And I'm just giving that a stir. I think that will wilt the basil to the frying pan. We're going to add a little bit of oil.
I've already added some salt and pepper to the fish on the one side. Let's add some salt and pepper to the other. Now these fish were frozen, and I think they might still be a little bit frozen. This is probably why there's so much moisture, but I'm sure it'll be all fine, right? So we're gonna cook this. The recipe says the instructions say for about 2 minutes on each side. I probably go a little bit longer, like I said, because they are frozen. And flip it over once. And then go from there. Okay, let's flip it over. Almost there. Give it a couple minutes. Then we'll take this off the skillet and throw in the zucchini mixture. Okay, so I just tested and I can see that it's breaking apart, so I would say this is done. Take this out. Dinner tonight and lunch tomorrow. And I'm just going to turn the heat off and just let it warm up. So not really cooking it too much. We don't want it to go all mushy. Okay, let's plate this up. Okay, you guys, there is tonight's meal. It didn't take me very long to prepare. That's what I like. We'll see how this goes. I'm not a huge fish fan. I don't mind cod, but we'll see if this tastes any good. Here's the fish, a little bit of basil, a little bit of tomato. Let's see how it goes. This is good. I think I have too much basil. I think I'd prefer it with a little bit less, but because the basil flavor is very, very strong, but not bad. Let's try the zucchini. I did make sure to include a little bit of sun-dried tomato. Sun-dried tomatoes, again, very powerful taste. So if you like strong flavors, well, strong flavors in my opinion, these definitely are them. I would probably cut back on the sun-dried tomatoes and the basil, as I mentioned earlier, but overall, I think this is a good dish. Not bad for fish. Okay, so I'm gonna leave you off here. Be sure to tune in on Tuesday when I give you my update on how week 3 went. And right now it's time to eat dinner.